We're in a series that we've begun through the Sermon on the Mount, and it's on the life lessons of Jesus. And what's really interesting is the Sermon on the Mount is Jesus' longest and most well-known sermon. And one of the things that I found interesting about it is that he doesn't teach it, he doesn't preach it in a synagogue where people are ready or they're coming kind of to hear the word of God. They're not in a temple, so there aren't these masses of people that are there worshiping, but instead they're on a hill. And Jesus is on this hill, and they all come, and they stand, and Jesus sits, and he begins to teach. He begins to teach in an ordinary way to what would be and were very ordinary people on the hill. He's teaching fishermen. He's teaching accountants, he's teaching the strong, he's teaching the weak and the meek, he's teaching people who are honest, people who are dishonest. There are a bunch of different types of people that have come to listen to Jesus. And he's teaching them some things that hopefully he believes will be very practical in their lives, but also will help them understand what it looks like to follow the Lord, what it looks like to follow God. He begins to teach them about how to deal with their anger, about fidelity, about anxiety, about all of these different issues that many of you and I are faced with. And so he has all of these people, and he's teaching these things so that they might understand what the kingdom of heaven looks like, and also so they might taste it and allow other people to understand what the kingdom of heaven looks like and will look like in the future. And then what he tells them here, this is one of the things that he tells them here, and I want us to pay attention to this. This is in Matthew 5, verses 13 through 16. He tells all of these people this. He says, "You are the salt of the earth. But if salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot." It says, "You all are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." So Jesus is looking at all of these different people from different places with different backgrounds, with different hookups, hangups, habits, all of these sorts of things. And he comes to them and he says, "You all are." Like, y'all are. I've talked about this before, like getting to live in the South for a time. I actually believe that that's helpful. Like, y'all is helpful because you can tell who people are actually talking to. Are they talking to just me personally, or are they talking to a group of people? I know we say "you guys," and I tell people I had a guy that I kind of used to hang out with and almost kind of take care of a little bit. Had some kind of, I loved him, but had some like mental hang-ups. And so he asked me, he was up visiting in Ohio, and he goes, "So, we say y'all in the South. How do you guys say you, like a group of people in the North?" And I told him, "Well, we just say you guys." And he goes, "Even if there's girls around?" Like, yeah, we do. And so what he says, though, to y'all, or to all y'all, right? He says to you guys, he says, "Your salt and your light," which is interesting here because he's just got all of these people, and he's making a statement about who all of you are. And what he's trying to tell these people on the hill as they're contemplating on whether or not they're going to follow Jesus and they're going to take in his teaching is that God has a purpose for you. Is that God has called you, and he has not created you by mistake. And I know I say this fairly often, but I'm sure there's somebody in the room that just needs to hear that again and again and again, that you are not a mistake, that you have a purpose, and God has called you to himself to make a difference. And that's what Jesus is doing here on the hill. That's one of the things he's doing. He said, "I don't care where you're from, what you've done, what your past is, how strong or how weak you are, whatever has gone on in your life or what is ever keeping you from following the Lord, that you can be a difference maker." And what he's saying is that I want you to live into it. And so you might not see much of yourself, but God wants to make much of you. That is one of the things that is going on here. And now Jesus then makes a statement about what these people are or will be if they decide to follow Jesus. He says they are simply salt and light. We're going to start with salt here, what Jesus might be talking about. Or we're going to start with light here on what Jesus might be talking about, because in the ancient world, salt had a lot of different meanings. So to understand even what Jesus is talking about with salt different purposes and different meanings, probably about 8 that people can kind of think of. But when you understand it in relationship to light, we can probably boil it down primarily to 1. Light is not that difficult for us to understand what Jesus might be talking about. It's simply a metaphor for wisdom and understanding. In the Psalms, we see this in Psalm 119. If you were raised in church, like you know this one, right? Your word is a lamp unto my feet and a what? A light unto my path. And so what is going on there, this is really easy for us to think about here. Like if you were to draw a picture, right, of a bright idea, what would you draw? A light bulb, right? Or you might say, I saw to express that you understand something. Or if somebody sheds light on something, you are thanking them for helping you to understand a concept that you might not know. Or if you were to be enlightened, somebody probably explained something clearly to you so that you can understand it. And so the Lord's word is a light to a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. So it's teaching us how to follow the Lord, and it's enlightening us on the way of the Lord. Now, Jesus, what he is doing here in Matthew, and this is what he does throughout the Gospels, Jesus is a Bible teacher. Well, if you were here last week, what I told you is what Jesus is doing is he is teaching. And just because these were ordinary people did not mean they were dumb people. These were people that they were educated. The Jewish people educated their children and the masses the best they could. But in the way that they educated them were through the Scriptures. Jesus was a Bible teacher who knew the Bible. And so when Jesus is teaching and he's preaching, he's not just making things up. What he is doing is he is drawing from the past and past Scriptures. And one of the places that he is certainly drawing for over and over again, I could show you more, but we don't have time, and I don't want to really just get real deep down into the weeds with some of this. He's drawing from Isaiah over and over again, especially in Matthew. You see it in Luke as well. And so in Isaiah 2, we see some allusions to light in what Jesus is talking about. Also, as he talks about being a city on a hill here. So pay attention and come with me here. This is in Isaiah 2. Isaiah 2, I'm going to read verses 2 through 5 this morning to help us explain and see what is going on here. And this is what we're told here by the prophet Isaiah. He says, in the last days, the mountain of the Lord's house will be the highest of all, the most important place on earth. It'll be raised above the hills, and people from all over the world will stream up. Get this, they're going to stream up there to the hill to worship. People from many nations will come and say, come, let us go to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of Jacob's God. There he will teach us his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For the Lord's teaching will go out from Zion. His word will go out from Jerusalem. The Lord will mediate between nations and will settle international disputes. They will hammer their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nations will no longer fight against nation, nor train for war anymore. And so what you have here with Isaiah is you have a vision. You have a vision of God's people at some point being a city on the hill that people stream to, that people go up to, that they are drawn to as this city teaches and leans into God's word and God's way. Now, as they come up to this city to learn from the Lord and his ways, and the people that are in this hill, on this hill here, what happens is these people then leave transformed. And so you don't come to the Lord and not look to be transformed. And what is the transformation that takes place is that swords become plowshares and spears become pruning hooks. So what is going on here? What is going on is that the Lord is saying, as people come to him, the thing that will happen is the things that take life, the things that remove life from people will be taken, and what they will be given are the things that support life, peace, and prosperity. And so what he's saying is that the people of God, as people come to them, what they'll do is they'll learn. They will learn how to be peaceful people. They will learn how to get along in their marriages. They will learn how to get along with their enemies. They'll learn how to love their neighbors. They'll learn how the tribe is not going to fight against tribe, that followers of the Lord are going to bring peace. But not only that, they're given new tools. And so what are these tools for? They're not weapons of war. What they are is they're tools for gardening. Well, if you grew up in the ancient world, even now, I mean, we're kind of separated from our food now. We go to the grocery store, right? But for like their entire life is built on what comes out of the ground. This is what sustains them. And what he is saying here is that as people come to the Lord, now they're going to come and they're going to learn how to be prosperous. And that the people of God are going to teach other people how to be prosperous, how to cultivate life, how people should live, how people should give life to other people, and not be aimed primarily at taking it. And so this is what is going on as Isaiah has his vision for the future. And by the way, when Jesus shows up, and this is what Jesus says before he gets to the sermon, he says, "Behold, for the kingdom of God is at hand." He is saying in a way that, hey, the time has come. The time has come for us to be this type of people. And check it out. I want you to show you why I believe that is true. Look at what Isaiah here says to the people as well. He says this to the people who are listening even then. He says, "Come, descendants of Jacob, let us walk in the light of the Lord." Come, let us walk in the light of the Lord. What Isaiah is calling people to is more than just a future vision. Now, we don't experience this perfectly. We all know that. Right? The people in Isaiah time, they never really leaned in. Like they never answered the call here. But what Jesus is telling the people that he's talking to, and what Isaiah was trying to get the people to do that he was talking to, he was trying to say, now is the time. Like, now is the time to walk in the light. But he's also telling us that all of this requires a response. All of this requires a response. If we want people to come to the Lord and leave transformed, we have to be a testimony to the Lord. Like you have to be on the hill has to be raised up. There has to be a light shining. People have to be drawn to the mountain. And for people to be drawn to the mountain, it's not just that we have instruction. It's not just that we have quote unquote wisdom. Like you can possess knowledge. You can possess wisdom. You can possess instruction. But what we are called to, and this is what Jesus is telling the people there on the mount, what you are called to is not just information. What you are called to is action. That's what light is. Knowledge and action. And so what is salt? What is salt? Well, if light is what's necessary to cultivate peace and prosperity and the way of the Lord, salt preserves it. That's what salt does. In the ancient world, salt was used as a preservation agent. You put it on your meat, you put it on your food. They have refrigerators, right? And so that's what it was primarily used for, is to preserve. And so what we are supposed to do as followers of Jesus is we are supposed to prevent the decay that leads to death in this world, that leads to destruction in this world, that leads to everything that undoes life, right? And we are to walk in the light and the instruction of the Lord. And we are to preserve Jesus' teachings as we do that. That is the function of salt here. And so I'm going to get into some application. I'm going to have some people come up here and kind of help us and encourage us this morning. The application here is fairly simple and fairly straightforward. Jesus says these two things here. He says, if salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. And then in Matthew 5:16, he says this. He says, let your light shine before others that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So let's summarize it like this, right? You are called as a follower of Jesus to concrete and observable acts of goodness, anchored in the teachings and examples of Jesus, so that others will come and glorify and honor God. And so as salt, we are here to preserve or to prevent decay and preserve life. We are here to preserve the way of God. We're told if salt loses its saltiness, like it's not good for anything anymore. In other words, like in the ancient world, salt could become defiled, and so it could begin to kind of mix with other agents. And if you mix salt with other agents, what it does is it loses its function. Like salt doesn't actually become salt, like unsalty. That would, like, it's no longer salt, right? If that happens. And so, well, but if you like all the time just trying to figure out, like, how can I be as unlike Jesus as possible and still have Jesus, basically? Like, how can I not follow Jesus as much as possible, but like still be and what Jesus is saying is that it's just, you can't do that. You can't preserve my teaching and my way and lose your distinctiveness as a follower. And so our distinctiveness, though, it's anchored in Jesus' teaching. It's anchored in the light. Jesus says this then, with light. He says, you should let your light shine before others. Pretty simple, right? How are you the light then? How are you the light? Jesus has a statement which is pretty radical here. He says, I am the light of the world in John. He says, whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And so this is kind of what's crazy. Jesus claims to be the light. I mean, like, there is no light that is shining brighter than Jesus. This is what he claims to be, and this is what he says he is. And then he says, we are the light as well. And so are we like Jesus? Like, are we completely like Jesus? Well, not exactly, right? I don't know anybody in here who is flawless and gets it right all the time. Not one of us. But we are made to reflect Jesus. Just as the moon reflects the sun, we are designed to reflect Jesus. And by the way, this is what it means to be made in the image of God. Jesus was fully the image of, you are trying to recapture, right, who you are actually meant to be. And as you are following Jesus and becoming like Jesus and learning how to love, how to forgive, how to deal with your anger, how to trust God in all things with your anxiety, like how to really be like, you are becoming more human. And so how are we light? How do we continue to do this? Well, one, not only do we do it individually, but we do it collectively. We are told that we are a city on a hill. That's what the church is supposed to be. And this is always a struggle for the church, right? Because we all come together with our own deal, like our own things that are going on inside of us. But it doesn't mean that we don't strive to be what God has called us to be. Now, if you've grown up like me, you grew up in a small town, like a city, like you never wanted to go to the city. City where like bad things happened or weird people were, like all of those sorts of things. But even early in the scriptures, like cities aren't necessarily good things. But as you continue, what God is doing is he's building cities. Like cities aren't always bad, and I think if we think about them with as much I guess grace as we can, what you see when you see a city, you see cooperation, right? You see progress. You see life in those places. And what's interesting is when you get to the end of the Bible, you see Jesus. What is he doing? And where is he returning to? What is he building? He's building a city. And he's building a city where there'll be no more darkness. Where there'll be no more tears. That all of that it'll be gone. And so we have this metaphor here that you're the light of the world and a city on the hill, and also mixed, by the way, with the metaphor of salt, which I said last week, like Jesus is constantly doing in the Sermon on the Mount and some of his teachings, which I think teachers tell you never to do, but is actually kind of helpful for us, because some of you might be bent like I am. Probably a lot of you are, because you're in church. Like you're bent just to kind of be more conservative. Like you don't. Sometimes you just want to keep things kind of the way they are, especially if they're good. Like you want to keep them that way, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like I'm a fan of G.K. Chesterton. It says, hey, like if there's a fence there, you should probably ask why it's there before you just take it down. But what salt is kind of a defensive mechanism, right? Like you're preserving. Light is more of an offensive mechanism, not offensive, although we can be here, like Jesus sometimes offensive. But it goes on offense. So like light drives out darkness. And so as followers of Jesus, one of the things that we need to think about as we think about being light, we need to make sure that we are doing a good job of showing people like what we are for, not just what we are against. Like what are the things that we are doing to bring life, to cultivate positive change? And as you think about the gardening tools, like sometimes it takes time and it takes effort. And what Jesus is doing here, and I think some of the things that we need to think about as Christians as we become light, is we need to think about the ways that we are creating positive change in all of our spheres of life. Like we want to make sure that we bring peace. We want to make sure that we cultivate prosperity. And one of the things that Jesus says here, and he's very blunt about it, by the way, he's like, if you aren't doing those things, he says you're kind of worthless. Do you catch that? Jesus says some pretty blunt things. In other words, like we are shirking our responsibility as Jesus followers if we aren't walking in the light and being light. And he uses that he mixes that metaphor with salt. And so one of the things that I try to do in my life, I don't always do a great job of this, but it's also one of my pet peeves for others, is like sitting back. If I'm going to complain about something, or like say, hey, I don't know if this should be going on, like I want to think about ways like how can I change it? How can I get involved? How can I make a difference? And which I think that's what's behind a little bit of what's going on here, because he's saying like, hey, all of you are difference makers. And some of us, we're just not stepping up. And there's a bunch of reasons why we might not do this, right? Some of us are afraid of persecution, like what people might say about us or what people might think about us, or just messing up. Jesus actually warns about all of that, and he actually tells us like it will happen, it can happen, and it does happen. Some of you just like, I don't have what it takes, right? I either don't have the money, I don't have the time, or I'm not willing to just give the time, or I don't have the gifts. And Jesus is saying, no, you've got it all. You're light. You are salt, and I want you to live into that. And as I'm about to call a panel of people up here, because we have some young people who are doing an incredible job of this. We have a ton of people who are doing an incredible job of this. But I do want to kind of sit down on this as they come and share with us this morning. I opened up with talking about how Jesus was speaking to ordinary people. Like he's speaking to ordinary and broken people, like people that really don't have anything special to bring to the table. And he delivers basically kind of this message to them. Both of these messages to them by doing that. He's basically saying, like, one, you are not worthless or without purpose in this world. And two, yet you can choose to act like it by doing nothing and allowing darkness to win in your life, by not driving it out within your life, your family, your community, church, and workplace. And what Jesus is saying to all of them is that all of you, all of us, we are called to concrete acts of goodness and be people who chase away darkness wherever we are at and wherever we go. And so to kind of help us with this and kind of just us to think through this maybe in our own ways, I've got some people are going to come up here and we're going to kind of celebrate or just kind of hear kind of what they're doing in their own lives and maybe get some ideas for ourselves about how to be light. So come on up, guys. All right, so good to have you, all of you up here. Josh, Kaylee, Noel, and Austin here with us. And actually, our church has people of all ages, but I think, Josh, you're the oldest. How old are you?
You called me young, though. So.
I know. Yeah, you're young still.
I'm 31.
31. So, and you're the oldest, right? So this is what's really cool, trying to make disciples and trying to raise people up. Each and every person here is trying to think about what it means to be a follower of Jesus and live their life as followers of Jesus in every sphere of their life. And so they're going to share. Josh is up here, and he is going to share for us this morning. I've asked him, I got this question for him. How has your faith influenced you as an entrepreneur and really inspired you to do good work so people will come to glorify God? If you don't know Josh, and you can I guess talk about this a little bit. Josh is the owner of the Exchange Coffee Company. that he just opened 6 months ago, 4 months ago. And so, yeah, why don't you share?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. So me and my wife went on a journey to launch our coffee shop probably 2 years ago, but we're finally open for business as about 4 months ago. But yeah, as Josh asked me the question of like, how do we go about showing Jesus in our context? There's like 3 areas that came to mind. There's us as business owners in relationship to our suppliers and vendors, us in relationship to our employees, and then us in relationship with our customers and guests. There are 3 different avenues. I don't know if any of you have done business with Christians. Historically, people don't like doing business with Christians. For some reason, there's a bad rep with that. And part of us going into business, we wanted to change that perspective and have people be grateful and excited to do business with us. And so on that supplier side, the vendor side, we always do our best to serve them well, to pay them before they have asked us to pay them, to over-communicate, to share the gratitude we have to work with them. From the employee side, that can be difficult these days. We aren't publicly a Christian company. We're a coffee shop. We like serving coffee and good coffee, so our team is not fully Christian. Part of our interview process, I let my team know, like, hey, I don't care what you believe, but me and my wife are Christians, and if that makes you uncomfortable to work in that environment, it's probably not a good place for you to work. But we're going to be openly Christian. We're going to love on you. We're going to talk to you about Jesus. And we would love to, if you think it's a good fit, we would love to have you on the team. But we sort of set expectations ahead of time, even in the interview process, because we want to love them well. We think that an employee-employer relationship should not be something that is daunting, but should be something that's exciting and somebody feels blessed and changed for being able to work in our company. The last part of it is really the customer side, where we get to see hundreds of people on a daily basis that we may or may not see again, but we get to hopefully show them a glimpse of Jesus. I'm going to read something here in a second, but we found that our goal in showing Jesus can't just be in small moments, but also it also has to be in the long term of how we invite people to the table. We do that with our employees, but we also do that with our customers as well. We have simple things like board game nights where we invite some customers to come play with us. There's a gay couple that comes every morning that we're going out to dinner with in a few weeks. And it's things like that where we keep on asking the question of what would Jesus do with these people and how would he engage them? And it might make me uncomfortable to go sit and have dinner with somebody that I'm like, what do we have in common to talk about for 2 hours? But then at the other side, it's going to be, well, how can I truly be Jesus to every single person that I come into contact with? Yesterday, one of my team members just texted this. It was a note left on a table from a customer, and there were just certain parts that, as Josh was speaking earlier, it seemed irrelevant. But I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's long, but 2 sentences here. It says, I notice the way you act and respond to customers and to each other, how your life and light in Jesus is so visible and so life-bringing, and it honors Jesus. It was refreshing to be in the space, and I love the way the space shows Jesus in every way. The way you have accepted the Lord's invitation to live differently and to share a light of him, it's encouraging to see it be held in our community. And so, I share that because it's like, again, like I said, our whole team is not Christian. We have, I think, mostly not Christian employees. But setting expectations of how I even want them to interact with people is the expectation of how we show Christ. And so I think it's been a fun process, and we've been blessed in these first 4 months. And again, our goal is not to make money. Like, it would be nice to make money. I know that's a business. But our goal, we've said from day one, if we break even and we never make a dime, but we get to love on our community, like, that's a worthwhile mission. And, we'll work our day job still. We'll do other things to pay for all the bills. But, the mission is to love people like Jesus loved people. And I think that means going to the table and inviting people to the table that in a church context, they'll probably never come to church. They'll probably never step foot in a church unless we invite them into our homes first. So, yeah.
Thank you. You can clap if you want. Yeah. Kaylee, you work for Big Brother and Big Sister here in Central Indiana. And so go ahead and share a little bit about Big Brother and Big Sister. and how your faith influences you as you operate in that sphere.
Yeah, so I am the volunteer and community outreach coordinator for Big Brothers Big Sisters of Central Indiana. Essentially, my job is coming into the counties that we serve and surrounding counties and sharing about what we do and who we are. And then my job is also to recruit bigs. But yeah, so that is what we do. The reason why I do what I do is despite going to school for ministry and having multiple opportunities to work in like traditional ministry spaces, they never were for me. Never were for me. I had like one internship working as an intern in like a church's youth ministry, and I was like, this is not for me. So kudos to Austin. Like volunteering and showing up was fun. Being in charge, not for me. But yeah, so that is why I found Big Brothers Big Sisters, because in that whole time and in that whole discernment, it was clear to me that whether I was in a traditional church space or not, it had to be around youth. So I found Big Brothers Big Sisters, and the reason why I love them so much is our mission is to ignite, empower, and defend the potential of our youth. And we do that through mentoring relationships. So we offer a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 relationship. So that's either one big and one little, or two bigs and one little. For the 2-to-1, it's usually like significant other, coworker, sister, friend. As long as you guys have known each other for at least 2 years, then you can be assigned the same kiddo. We're always going to make sure that you're within a 20 to 30 minute driving radius, because we don't want that to be a barrier. And we offer a lot of low cost and no cost activities as well. So that can look like we have partnerships with You Paint Pottery, and you can go in and get a discounted rate there. In Johnson County, there's a place called Rascals, which is like Dave & Buster's, and the kids love it. So we have a partnership with them, and if you show that you're a big, you get to go there for a significantly discounted rate, because if you know anything about Dave & Buster's, she ain't cheap. So yeah, there's discounted rates there. Our office will host events. Sometimes we have super generous donors that will donate their Colts tickets or their Pacers tickets that we then get to give to a match to go to the games for free, which is super fun. But yeah, so I really would love to encourage you to consider being a big. I'll be out in the lobby, I'll be out in the lobby to answer any more questions. But we do have 1,054 kids on the wait list. And these are kids that live in Johnson, Hamilton, and Marion counties that have sat in our office and looked our staff in the eyes and said, I want someone in my corner that's not paid or family member. So we really are trying hard to find adults who are willing to do that. And I know that mentorship is a big, heavy word, and I try not to use it even in my pitches, because it is a big and heavy word, like discipleship is a big and heavy word. But it is really important, and our commitment is not super extensive either. So we just ask for you to give a minimum of 4 hours a month. And that can look however you want. It can be once a week at a coffee shop after school. It can be one Sunday you go out to B-Dubs and you watch a Colts game, and that's your monthly commitment. It can really look however you want. So if you guys have questions, I'll be in the lobby, and I would love to talk to you more about being a big, or even connecting with your workspaces or other pickleball clubs, any of the things.
Noelle? So Noelle's a teacher, a local teacher, and she has recently started serving as a kids ministry assistant here at Catalyst. And so she's clearly using her gifts as a teacher in our kids ministry, which we are extremely thankful for. And she kind of jumped right in pretty quickly, which is pretty awesome, because she's been great and we've needed help with our kids. But what made you decide to do that?
So before I start, I would like to start off by asking all of you a question, and that is, what do you want to be when you grow up? I've been a teacher for almost 2 years now, and as we get older, this becomes a very profound question in our life. And I can remember when I decided to become an elementary teacher, wrestling with the idea that maybe this wasn't the calling God had on my life. However, throughout my teaching career, I've been able to see God's faithfulness in a lot of different ways. I've cried with parents over their child's situation. I've held kids as they've gone through foster care. And I've seen kids battling health conditions that are terminal. And I watched all these kids still show up with a smile every day. And just hearing kids tell you that they wish I was their mom, or they wish they could come home with me, it really made you realize, how much of an impact we have on people all around us. And so I have learned that my role as a teacher wasn't all that I was. I'm called to be the hands and feet of Jesus, and I think that's all of our callings. Just having that servant's heart really allows you to meet people where they're at and see others the way Jesus sees us. So flash forward, about 6 months ago, I started attending church here consistently, and within those 6 months, God's kind of flipped my world around, and I started leading the 5th and 6th grade group every Wednesday night and also helping out with the children's ministry. And just being a part of this church and having so many people open their arms to me, it's really made this place feel like a home.
Yeah.
So there's a scripture from Isaiah 43:19 that says, "See, I am doing a new thing. I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." And I think this is such a beautiful reminder that when God calls you to something, he's able to walk through that door with you.
Amen. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, you clap for her too. Wait, you claps? Oh, I didn't notice. You did a great job too, Kayla. You did a really good job. There you go. Okay, yeah. Well, last but not least is Austin. Obviously, doing what we do together to raise up and disciple our young people, whether it be Noel or Austin and everything else that we've got going on. I just kind of wanted you to hear from Austin and some of the things that are going on in the student ministry, the way that he is using our kids ministry and student ministries to really be a light to our young people, but also to teach them that they are a light. Again, was such something we say and something that we believe, that you are the church of tomorrow, you're the church of today. And so Austin is doing a great job of discipling our young people. And so Austin, how are you helping our young people glorify their Father in heaven?
Yeah, so when Josh, he did give me a heads up this would be the question because he likes me to be prepared as often as possible, although that doesn't happen very frequently. And I have to say, it's not just me, first of all. We have an amazing group of leaders that pour into our kids regularly. Even you all through, whether it's time spent on Sunday mornings, time in our children's area, even the money that you donate is all impacting our kids in some way, so thank you. And this past weekend, we had an amazing opportunity. We call it Energy Camp. You've probably heard me ramble on about it a lot at some point if you spend more than an hour with me every week. And it's because we have intentional time twice a year where our kids get to unplug and connect with God. And that's really our main goal as a student ministry is to facilitate connections between our students and God. Oftentimes we assume, and leaders ask me as they step into small group leading and things, well, I don't know every book in the Bible. I haven't read the whole thing, or I don't know everything. And that's not necessarily always necessary. Yes, we teach the Bible. Yes, I do need to know a little bit more just to be able to teach it. But in reality, our job is to create long-lasting relationships, not just with the kids, but between the kids and God, and facilitating their ability to be the light by empowering them to connect with Jesus and channel Jesus through them. And that's kind of our main goal in everything that we do, whether it's Energy Camp, repping the shirt today because, they're awesome, right? Or it's on Wednesday nights or Mondays with our, whatever it is, our goal is to make sure that every kid feels love, they learn how to love, and then they learn how to go out and spread that throughout their community.
Yeah. Well, thank you all. You can clap for them all. As they kind of head off. Take your seats with you. Now, my point for kind of having all of them up here is really just for you all to see. There are a lot of different ways that we can be salt and light in our community. And it doesn't mean you need to volunteer here. Some of you are business owners. Being a good business owner and helping people prosper, whether it be your employees, the community that you're in, that is one of the ways that I believe that Christians are salt and light. In fact, I didn't ask the person to share. I didn't ask the person to share permission for to reveal who these people are. So I'm not going to say it, although this is good. There was somebody that was at my house and they were helping fix something for me, and they said so and so attends church at our church, and I just want you to know that. And he said, when I first started attending and saw that they attend there, they owned the business that he had worked at prior. He said, I was really glad to be at that church. Just because the people who had been his business owners and had employed him prior had been such good employers of him and stewards of their business. When he walked into this place, he's like, that's a church that I want to be involved in. And that's an incredible thing to think about. All of you have different gifts, passions, skills, abilities, And God has called you to be salt and light. Some of you, right, if you are earners, like giving to this place and to this people is a way that you contribute for us to be a city on a hill. We all have something that we can contribute, times, talents, and treasures to make sure that we are fulfilling Jesus' call in our life. Now, as we conclude, we are going to respond this morning with communion. We are coming forward as people who are called to make a difference. And as we do that, we remember that we don't do any of it alone. As you come forward to communion, one of the things that we should be reminded of here this morning is that, one, you do it with God. God is with you as you are set out to be salt and light. So you're not doing anything God has called you to without the Lord walking with you and beside you. And Noel reminded us of that this morning. Two, we're doing it together as a church. It says y'all are a light on the hill. We're doing it. We're doing it with other churches, other Christians that are around in the area. And the question is, like, as we come forward, we need to be reminded of that. We need to be reminded of, hey, what do we want to be known for? And so as you come to the table, maybe come to that on your mind this morning. We invite everybody to communion this morning and come to the Lord. As you come forward, you can see how to come forward there on the screens. As you come forward, grab your juice and your bread and go ahead and go back to your chairs, and we'll all take it together. I'll come up and we'll all take it together. So you may come.